Welcome to the Evolution of Bold podcast, where we celebrate the power of women and their journey to greatness. I'm your host, Venice Johnson, also known as the Boldness Coach. I'm excited to take you on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation. Whether you're just starting out or well into your journey, I'm here to guide you through the challenges, help you find your purpose, and to help you let go of anything that's holding you back. So take a deep breath, relax, and get ready to dive into some juicy topics that will inspire and empower you to find your level of bold and evolve into the best version of yourself. But before we get started, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you can join a community of bold women who are transforming their lives. Make sure that you hit that notification button so that as new shows are released, that you get notified. And also connect with us on social media. We want to hear your journey. We want to celebrate you on the journey. We want to support you on the journey. And also, when you share, you inspire other women in the community to share their journey as well. So now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, let's get into the juicy topic of today. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. On today's show, I'm talking about developing the capacity to live a full life. And I'm going to talk about this concept, capacity, and its role in every area of our life. We're going to get clear today on what is capacity and what gets in the way of building capacity, and how can we build capacity in the different areas of our life. And I'm also going to share with you how this topic came about, because I think it's really important to know how we got here. Now, like I always ask you, get your favorite libation, get your wine, get your coffee, get your tea, get your water, and of course, get something to take notes with, because this topic is going to be juicy. So let's get into the content. So I want to tell you first how this topic came about. I was coaching a client earlier today, and I was sharing with her some of the successes that I was having in my business over the last 2 weeks. And my coaching business. And she mentioned to me that, she wanted to find out how could she tap into those programs that I had just completed. And I said to her, no doubt you can sign up and tap into these programs. But the question I have for you is, do you have the capacity to be able to create space for this information, for you to implement and execute this information since your business is new and it's just launching? And she was like, nah, I don't think so right now, but I do want to have it in the future. And I said to her, you absolutely should have it and you can have it. But it brought up, the topic around capacity. And it got me to thinking about, times periods when I was growing in my life, personally, professionally, financially, spiritually, emotionally. It brought me full circle to really looking back on those different aspects of my life and when things weren't working out. And when I really peeled the layers back and I really got into reflection and introspection, I was really able to get clear that I didn't have capacity in a lot of areas of my life to hold those desires, to hold those goals, to even hold those wants. And I had to really figure out how to create capacity in my life for me to be able to create the life that I live now. And so that brought me full circle to talking about it on the podcast. So let's get into the topic. So first, I want to talk about defining capacity. Excuse me. What is capacity really about? In this context, capacity is really about how to hold, manage, and expand various aspects of our life emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's about really thinking about and getting clear on how much energy, resilience, and focus we have to navigate relationships, career challenges, personal growth, and our own well being. It's about creating enough space in your life so that you can grow, experience joy, handle setbacks, and live with intention. So just take that in for a minute. Because most of us typically don't walk around asking ourselves, do I have the capacity for this desire, this goal, this want, or perhaps even this need? No, we don't. What we tend to do is make a goal. We talk about a desire. We talk about what we want and what we need. And we just sometimes go for it, put a plan in action, and we just dot the I's, cross the T's. And we just want that thing to appear to us because we feel like we worked hard for it. We feel like we deserve it. We feel like we are worthy of it. And no doubt all of those, components may be true. But what happens is when we haven't prepared ourselves to receive it, when we do get it and it comes true for us, then we can't hold it. And we find ourselves kind of on this hamster wheel, right? Finding ourselves like always, going after the same thing. Or we feel like, why is this not happening for me? Why is it not working for me? Why do I always, attract the wrong person in my life? Why am I always having financial challenges and issues? Why am I always, in a position where I'm not being able to be promoted on my career? And a lot of times, if you tap into looking at your capacity for it, you might find that's where the answer lies. But let's talk about what gets in the way of building capacity. Now that we're clear about what this means, and I'm going to give you some different areas of what gets in the way. And perhaps some of these areas may resonate with you more than others, or they may all resonate with you. The first one I'm going to talk about is overcommitment. Can I just be honest with y'all? Because we on the couch, right? Here is what I've noticed about myself and about women that I have coached over the past, almost 30 years is that one of the themes that show up where women tell me that the reason that they can't, experience some of the joy in their life and sometimes joy period in their lives because they got all of these commitments. They've got the kids' commitments, the spouse or partner commitments. They've got the job. They've got the church. They've got the volunteer roles that they're doing. They got what their friend is asking them to do. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And what I constantly hear is the overcommitment. And the number one thing that they tell me is, I don't have time for myself. So, you've got to really look at, are you overcommitting in areas in your life that really are sapping your capacity for you to bring that joy in, right? You end up having exhaustion. It really, challenges your focus, so that you are not focusing on yourself, you're focusing on that thing. And when you are focusing on everything around you except for what's important and what matters to you ain't got nothing left. So you really got to look at, are you overcommitting to other people? And if what you're committing to, does it really matter? Now, it's not that it's not important because it may be, but does it matter in the grand scheme of how you're living your life? Does it matter in the grand scheme of adding value to your life, adding to your joy, and adding to your fulfillment? You got to be honest with yourself on this, right? The next is limiting beliefs. Let's keep it 100. These limiting beliefs, they got a whole mind of their own. And when we are stuck and operating from old belief systems and patterns, it's really hard for us to see what's possible in the next step. And a lot of times, what we'll do is we'll go to the itty bitty committee and we will tell them what we're scared of, what we're afraid of, and we will look for them to co sign on our fears. And when we do that, then what happens is self doubt comes in. We start really looking at fear of failure. We start tapping into negative past experiences. And sis, y'all know what I'm about to say? We create a whole scenario around why something could possibly not work. And then we choose to stay where we are in the overcommitted situations because we're like, well, I just may as well stay where I am because it's not going to make a difference anyway, because it's probably not going to work out. So I'm going to need you to check your limiting beliefs, and I'm going to need you to check your self sabotage talk. Because if you are thinking that way, and that outward expression is showing up in how you're living your life, you're right. You're not going to have the capacity if you're operating from limiting belief systems and operating from, bouts of self sabotage. So you got to look to shift that around. We're also going to talk about fear of change. Listen, nobody likes change. Nobody likes change. From a baby that can't have their way, that used to get their way with you, to the adult who is used to things always being a particular way. But here's the truth of the matter: life is ever changing. No day is ever the same. Every day is different. Every second, every minute, every hour is different. And so change presents us an opportunity to be in curiosity. It presents us an opportunity to be in exploration. It presents us the opportunity to experiment. But if we are resistant to change, we won't get an opportunity or a chance to play in that space. So you've got to really think about, what are you holding on to and what are you resisting? Do you want things to stay the same, but yet you want something different? Or do you want to stay in a place of comfortability because, as they say, it's the devil that you know, right? So I really want you to start thinking about that. Really stepping into change is necessary for growth, but step into change from a perspective of you willing to do it versus you being forced into it. And I think that's probably one of the things that challenges people the most, is that people feel like, I'm being forced to do this. But when you look at it through the lens of, this change could be good, and perhaps I could let go of something, old beliefs, overcommitment, and it may create space for something new for me. So I want you to really look at that. Another area that gets in the way of us building capacity is that perfectionism. Lord have mercy. The perfectionism itself is a sign of fear of change. Perfectionism also is a sign of having limited beliefs. Perfectionism also is a sign of looking for external validation. Perfectionism really robs us. It robs us of time. It robs us of healthy self-esteem. It puts us on a path to burnout. It puts us on a path of not really living fully, in within our authentic self. So, and I'm going to tell you the story about and share with you how perfectionism held me back. And you may have heard me say and share parts of this story in other episodes. But I remember years ago, when I started doing corporate training. And that is one of the hats that I wear under my coaching business, as I do workforce development training. And I remember when I was writing and designing curriculum, how I literally would need to give myself like 72 hours to develop curriculum. That meant researching, that meant finding the right images, finding the right exercises, finding the right content, and especially content that I knew, and bringing my own expertise in. And what ultimately would happen is I would be exhausted because I would be so in my head about, is this right? Is that picture right? Is that font size right? Is that font type size right? If I tell somebody this, this scenario, what are they going to think? Are they going to be grading me? Or are they going to be judging me? Oh, let me make sure this is right over here. Let me make sure the words line up, the right way at the end of the page. And, I just had all of these thoughts in my head that I wanted to get things perfect and just so. And here's the funny thing that happened: I spent so much time in the place of perfectionism that when I actually got to deliver the class, I was exhausted delivering the class because I had just worked myself up in a tizzy. And I found myself really having to push myself throughout the day in delivering the training. I saw myself not being able to actually embody and embrace and experience the excitement that was happening in the room because of exhaustion, from overthinking and overdoing it. And here's the other funny thing is that every time I presented content, to people at different companies, they all loved the content. Nobody had a checklist talking about, oh, this word should have been the same size as that word. People were forgiving if I misspelled a word. People were forgiving if I forgot to dot the I, or if I used a big I versus a little I. And those things didn't happen often, but people were more interested in my experience and my expertise. They valued that more so than they did me making sure that it had the right picture, the right color, the right font. When I realized that, I was able to step back and say, listen, I am enough. And my experience and expertise speaks for itself. So I don't need to go overboard. And I also told myself that if there is something, or should I say, if there's an opportunity to enhance what it is that I am producing, I'm open for the feedback. I'm open for the ideas. That can only make my content better. And when I gave myself grace on that, I actually dwindled down my time from 72 hours to about 8 hours, and then eventually to 6 hours. So I was able to come up with a system and a process that allowed me to be able to show up fully in the development of my content. And I created a process and a system that allowed me to give myself a full night's rest prior to delivering the training so that I could be not only physically present, but mentally and emotionally present for the delivery of the training. So that, just giving myself space to enjoy, the skill that I have, giving myself space to enjoy the experience, and giving myself space to put my expertise into action help to increase the capacity of joy in being a corporate trainer. So just think about how that perfectionism could be possibly robbing you. So I've listed some ways that get in the way of your capacity, but I also want to talk about other areas that, capacity could be being affected in your life. So think about relationship with yourself. Self-awareness is so important for us to be mindful around. It's important for us to really understand our needs and our desires and our limitations. When you are self aware about your needs, it helps you to really look at, are you overcommitting, to other people's desires and needs? When we start getting clear about our desires, we start looking around like, what is my desire and where will it fit into my life? And when we tap into our self awareness, we can really look at what's getting in the way. What limitations have I self imposed? Or what limitations have I accepted outside from people? So, relationship with yourself and self awareness can help you to really look at ways that you may be impacted from a capacity standpoint. Emotional resilience. Oh, this is another one. I think all of us can relate to this at some point where we have been in environments, whether it's been work environments, whether it's been relationships with other people, friendships, intimate personal relationships with people where they were emotionally taxing, right? And it was so heavy to be in those connections with them. It was so heavy when we went into those environments. And it just really impacted us, our resiliency, our ability to bounce back. And let me break this down even, or should I say, bring it home even closer. Have you ever had a friend that every time y'all got together on the phone or in person, that person always had some type of issue going on with them? Every time y'all got together, they were spewing out their problems. They would go from A to Z, on what's not working in their lives, the problems and troubles they're having at their job, what they're having in their relationships, what they're having with their kids. And you can't get a word in edgewise. And you are just, and they're asking you for your advice, and you are just feeling like, oh, this is so emotionally heavy. You're like, I just want to have a conversation about anything other than your problems. And you find yourself always having to be the sounding board. You find yourself having to always give them ideas and suggestions. You find yourself perhaps just always running with a bucket of water to put their fire out. And you get to thinking about, I don't have anything emotionally left for even myself sometimes. So, developing emotional resiliency is really important with expanding your emotional capacity for things that allow you to be able to embrace self compassion and give your own self emotional space to grow. You may want to start thinking about putting boundaries around relationships and putting boundaries around access from relationships that are emotionally taxing. Because if you don't, you're going to have a hard time processing emotion in healthy ways for your own self. So just give it some thought. Another area that I want to touch, and circle on again is the growth mindset. I really want you to start thinking about cultivating a growth mindset. See challenges as opportunities for expansion rather than an obstacle. Every experience in life teaches us something. I now, because at one point I was in that space where I felt like I just can't get ahead. I want to use this example. It's kind of like when you're starting to build your savings, right? Your savings account, and you're like, I'm going to create this emergency fund so that I could have an emergency fund. And then you put money into the savings account and you put, like, let's say you get $200 in there. And then something happens where you got to take the $200 out, and then you go back, a time period later, and you find yourself in this hamster wheel, and every time you put money into that account, it's always being attacked by something else outside of you, right? And you're like, I just can't win for losing, right? And you think, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm just not going to do an emergency fund because this is not working. But perhaps what that is teaching you is to really look at the emergencies and see, are they an emergency for you, or are they other people emergencies? And if it's an emergency for you, is it really an emergency? And could it be solved that way with that amount of money? Or perhaps could you work out a payment plan to be able to respond to that emergency? Or perhaps could you pay a percentage of the money for the emergency versus, the full amount? So you could look at that through two lenses. One is, I can't win for losing, and that's really a limiting mindset. Or you could look at this, from a growth mindset and say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to increase my capacity to really understand what's going on here and to see this as an opportunity for me to really consider options and to exercise my options. So really look at, these three areas as ways that you can build capacity within the relationship to yourself. I want to also talk about building capacity in relationship with others. So one of the things that I've learned, in this 56-year journey of my life so far is that authentic connections are so important to me. I only, at this point, surround myself with people that really nourish my soul. And these are people that feed me. We feed each other. And these are individuals that prioritize relationships, they prioritize connections, and it's reciprocal and it's nurturing. We give each other space to be who we are. We also give each other the capacity to be who we are when we are connected. So I really want you to look at some of the relationships that you just might need to reevaluate. Are these really authentic connections for you at this point in your life? And be honest. And you don't have to call people and say, listen, I'm not going to be your friend anymore because this is not an authentic connection. You can allow the season itself to really manage the dissipation of that relationship. Sometimes we just keep going back and keep responding to calls and keep responding to texts and text messages and keep overcommitting. We keep operating in a space of lack of boundaries, and we continually facilitate inauthentic connections continuing on. So sometimes we just gotta, be able to tell someone thanks, but no thanks. Sometimes we got to say, I have other plans, and you actually need to make other plans for yourself. And sometimes we just need to let the call go to voicemail and return it, perhaps hours or even days later sometimes when we are in a better emotional state. So check to see if those inauthentic connections are really zapping your capacity for healthy relationships. I want you to think about your communication skills and really speaking truthfully. This was one of the areas that I really had to work on, and I chose to work on it, because I wanted to make sure that number one, I'm being truthful with myself, and number two, that I'm being truthful to other people. And it was a bit difficult on both ends because when I would say it to myself, that meant that I was really speaking truthfully to myself, and I needed to own the truth that I was telling myself, which meant that I probably needed to or had to disrupt old patterns and old behaviors. And and also to have an awareness around old patterns and behaviors and how I was showing up in communication exchange with other people. And so when I really, looked at developing my communication skills from the perspective of speaking truthfully with myself, it made it that much more easier to be truthful with other people. And there were times when other people said that the truth that I shared with them hurt their feelings. And here's the reality: we can't control anybody's feelings. But what we can do is to speak from a place of true experience with a person. When you're speaking from an experience of a person, you actually can connect it to something that actually happened, where the both of you were in the exchange of that. You can tell them about a word or a phrase they used. Maybe you were with them in person physically and you saw them do something, or you could be able to recount, an activity or an expression that occurred. And so I always say that, this is my experience of you. And I always ask for permission, with that person. May I be truthful with you about my experience? And that's important so that it doesn't come across like I'm attacking them, but I'm also setting some boundaries around, the communication connection. Like, listen, I'm your friend and I'm gonna tell you the truth of what I see. But I'm also setting boundaries with them that I'm going to be truthful with myself about my experiences that I have when I'm with you or when I'm talking with you. And that will give you space as well as them space, right? To be able to look at, how do you want this capacity of this communication between the two of us to evolve or not? So, developing your communication skills and speaking truthfully with yourself is important. The other aspect of developing your communication skills is being vulnerable with others as well as being vulnerable with yourself. Listen, you got to speak up. When something doesn't feel right, right? That in your gut, that is telling you that's the truth of the experience that you are having with that communication exchange. And there are times when you need to put yourself out there and you got to express that that was uncomfortable for me. Or sometimes you have to really be able to go to people and say in the communication exchange that I need to be vulnerable with you and tell you, perhaps something about me that's hard for me to say. and ask them, would you mind holding capacity for me, holding space for me to be able to share this? That means you're not judging me. You really are listening with your heart and not just with your ears, right? And then you also get to do that as well as create a space where people can be vulnerable with you. And really ask yourself, can you hold capacity for the level of vulnerability that this person wants to share with you? So we have to be honest with ourselves in that. I'll tell you another story. I remember there was this time when I was dating this gentleman. We had met, and we hit it off, and things were going well in terms of the conversations we were having. And at one point, I think we probably had been talking with each other on the phone for a couple of weeks, and we were deciding if we were going to go out on a date. And I remember him sharing with me some personal things that had happened in his life, when he was going through his divorce and things that were happening with his children and, just the challenges. And, it was just a lot of information that he was sharing. And he was kind of basically being vulnerable with me and pouring his heart out. And as he talked to me, it was just so heavy. It was so heavy. And I felt like I am not able to give capacity, to this person because they need a whole lot of support and attention. And I'm really just trying to date. And that's not where my life is. So it was just really hard for me to show up in an authentic way with him. So I ultimately had a conversation with him and I thanked him and I said, you are an incredible man, attractive, you funny, you seem like you would be fun to be with, but I don't have the capacity to be able to continue entertaining the conversations that we're having. They're just very heavy. And I think that it would be better for you to find a person, who can hold capacity for you, in what you need. And it was an uncomfortable conversation, but he thanked me. And at the end, I felt so much better because I felt like, whoo, I don't have to force the communication to continue to happen because I could see how it wasn't healthy for me. And perhaps it would have ultimately been not healthy for the potential relationship that we thought we were working towards. And the last area I want to say in building capacity in relationship with others is listen, sis, let go of the toxic relationships. Come on now. Sometimes we hold on way too long in toxic relationships with toxic people because we just been doing it so long and we don't know what else to do. We just it just become automatic and we have become numb to it. So I really want you to evaluate if you have toxic relationships around you, qualify what that toxicity is doing to you, how it's affecting you, and your capacity to be emotionally available, your capacity to be vulnerable, your capacity to really be truthful and honest, in the communication with that person, the physical capacity. I really want you to evaluate how that toxicity is really attacking you so that you can see it from the vantage point of this is how it's showing up in my life versus really talking to the other person. Because it's easy for us to say, oh, that person is toxic and to put it all on them. But sometimes we are the recipient of that toxicity from that person. We can tell the truth from our own end and not wait, or not have to have our truth validated externally by somebody else. You're in a toxic relationship, get out of it, right? They drain you. They're not healthy. And they also keep you from having a growth mindset. And especially, I hear a lot of this, from people in their work environments. Some people won't leave a department. They will stay in that department working in an environment that's really unhealthy for them. They don't feel well supported. They don't feel psychologically safe, in that environment. There's negative language going around. Management is not supportive of them. And sometimes people stay in those environments way too long. And before you know it, they have health issues. They got stress issues. They got self-esteem issues, they have performance issues, and sometimes that will lead to that person losing their job or having to go out on disability. So you don't have to stay in toxic relationships. You don't have to stay in toxic environments. When you realize this is too much for me and this is not healthy for me, you got to get out of there, sis. You got to get out of that. So now the last area that I want to talk about is career development. Listen, you if you got a dream about the promotion, you got a dream about increasing your income, you've got a dream about working in a particular type of company or industry, and you know that getting there is going to require something different of you. I really want you to look at developing your skill set and creating a plan to really put those skills in action and to develop those skills or to gain new skills or perhaps to go back for reskilling, right? So reskilling, that's when you are looking at an old skill and you're up leveling it. So I want you to look at ways that you can expand your capacity for a new role and new responsibilities because you have put a plan around skill building. Here's the reality. No one's coming to save you. No one's going to come up to you and say, hey, Miss Venice, we think you should be promoted. So these are the skills that you need to acquire to get promoted. Do these skills, then come and let me know. And ta-da, we're going to promote you. It doesn't work that way. I think back in the day, they used to tell you, we're going to put you in management and this is what's going to happen. We're going to put you on this track. And when you finish, yeah, come and tell me. Days of old are gone. So we really have to look at, what can we do to build our skills, to put us in position so that we can expand our capacity. I shared earlier with you at the top of this episode that I had completed, two programs back to back at these world known academic, institutions. And in order for me to get myself, to the application process, they asked me specific questions on the application. And really what it boiled down to was, do you have the capacity, you know, in your skill development as well as in your business to be able to really absorb this information? Do you have the capacity that you could actually be able to embrace it, that you could actually execute it and implement it in your business? And I had to ask myself those questions because there was a matter of investment of financial resources as well as investment of time. But there was a period in my career where I wasn't ready. I didn't have the capacity. I had so much going on. So now, as I step into the next level, I've created space, in my career so that I can enhance those skills because I know that enhancing them will give me the opportunity to increase my financial capacity. So just want you to think about these areas, these different areas in your life that perhaps are areas of opportunity for you to build your capacity. And lastly, I want to say in this area is your physical well-being. Here's the truth of the matter. None of the things that I've said to you in terms of you building capacity really matters if you're not taking care of your health. Your health is the foundation of building self capacity. When you are taking care of yourself, you're exercising, you're eating as best as you can. When you are making sure that you're getting your physical checkups, right? When you are doing everything possible in, keeping yourself as healthy as you can, you're getting sleep, you're drinking water, you're having really fulfilling, nurturing relationships, right? When you are in a place of curiosity for growth and expansion in your life, all of those areas are facilitated by you being a healthy individual. So really look at your overall well-being and see where the opportunity is for you to better take care of yourself so that when those new opportunities show up, that you have the capacity to actually be able to bring forth your full self. So I want to round this out as we get ready to close out this episode. So here are some areas and things that you can do to build capacity, right? So I've given you some tips along the way, but just want to give you a few more. So one is prioritize yourself. Prioritize yourself and prioritize, those different things that are in your life and see what matters and what doesn't matter. You've got to ask yourself what truly matters in this space. What truly matters with this work that I'm doing, the volunteer work that I'm doing, right? What truly matters, in how I show up for other people. So you've got to ask yourself what truly matters and start to prioritize. The next is saying no more often. It's okay to say no. You got to say no more often. The world is still going to turn. People are going to go on and find other resources, tools, and solutions. They ain't going to stop. So really look at saying no more often. And no is a complete sentence. You've heard me say that before in other podcast episodes. No is a complete sentence. And if you start saying it with small things, you're going to find yourself building up to the bigger things to say no to. Someone recently sent me an invitation to be on their board, and I kindly turned them down. I thank them so much for them thinking of me, and I'm excited for the direction that their board is taking the organization. However, I don't have the capacity to take on a board seat at this time. And I wish them the best of luck in finding someone to fill that slot. And that was it. I didn't think nothing of it. And I haven't heard anything back from them because they went on to find someone else. So say no more often. Next, I want you to take care of your energy. Your energy is so important. You have to really manage you so that at the end of the day, you're not, just so exhausted that you don't even have the capacity to feed yourself. You're having your restlessness. You can't just like calm down and relax. You've got to really look at taking care of your energy. And that goes back to your overall well-being. Protect your energy. Say no to people more often and prioritize. And the last thing that I want to say is to continue on building progress for yourself. When you see things are working, when you see the subtraction happening, and you're like, I'm creating space, I'm moving these things out of the way so other great things and amazing things can come into my life. When you see the success and fulfillment happening for you because you are continuing in the process of growth, you're on the right track. So really continue to grow. But I just want you to really look at the capacity for you being intentional in expanding your life in every way. Listen, this doesn't happen overnight. It took me years to get to the point of building capacity for myself. But what I will tell you on this side sits joy and fulfillment. So I don't have a problem saying no to people. I don't have a problem not going to every event that's out there. I don't have a problem with saying no to anybody in my family, including my son. He'll tell you that. I don't have a problem with, saying no to friends. But creating capacity in my life in those areas have really allowed me to have more time to be with myself and to be clear about my desires, my needs, and my wants. So as you reflect on this conversation, I want you to do an audit in your life. And I want you to be truthful and honest with yourself. Where in your life can you create capacity? What can you let go of so that you can open up space for more of something to come into your life? If it no longer serves you, it has to go. So I want to thank you for your time with me today in this episode. We talked about what is capacity, what gets in the way of building capacity, and how to build capacity in different areas of your life. Thank you for hanging out with me this afternoon, and I want you to continue to strive and thrive in being bold, big, and bad. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Evolution of Bold podcast. I hope you found the conversation as inspiring and empowering as I did. It's always a pleasure to share the stories of my journey along with those of other remarkable women who have shown us what it means to live life boldly. I'd love to know what stood out to you the most. Your feedback is really important to me. So please leave a comment in the feed or on one of our social media channels. And don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification button before you go. Stay connected with us for more insights and exclusive content. Keep evolving, stay bold, and always live your truth. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for our next show. Until next time, I'm Venice Johnson, the Boldness Coach, cheering you on in your journey towards your level of bold.